And if you want, we can I can try and find like an Instagram filter that irons your shirt for you.
It's crazy. They actually have that.
I don't know if they do, but they probably do.
I thought you were being serious. I wouldn't be
No.
surprised.
Welcome to the show, Dan. I didn't actually ask before we hit record. I'm assuming it's just Voss.
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Welcome to the
Yeah.
show, Dan Voss. Good morning, or good afternoon from here, and good morning to you. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, I'm doing really well. We're turning corner on weather in Chicago, which is great.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we started that here in Nova Scotia, and then we got pounded this past weekend by the white stuff. So it's just our
Hmm.
reality. Our reality here is it goes a little bit longer, but
Yep.
we have two young kids, and it's actually really fun watching them engage with it, and it
Yeah.
brings me back to my childhood and like just that idea of putting on snow pants and going outside till your nose is running into your mouth and
It's
coming
the
out for hot
best.
chocolate. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Um, I'll be very candid with you as I work to be with all of my guests. I ran through my head so many different ways I wanted for this podcast to start because I really am so intrigued by what you do
Mm.
and why you do what you do, and we'll get to that. But I was thinking about what questions should I ask and where should I kick this off, and what I landed on was something that I experienced as a member of a very small men's group that I was a part of in Vancouver before we moved back home here to Nova Scotia. And we would always start this group meeting, which was actually on Zoom, similar to where you and I are right now. We would
Hmm.
start the meeting by announcing appreciation and integration. And I've heard this other places since, that other groups that use this, whether it's in a business environment or similar to that like intimate group where there's sharing is open and welcome. And I thought it would be an interesting place for you and I to start, just to give me a better sense of where you're currently at,
Mm.
and just get a better sense of where your headspace is at in general. So, if you could humor me and the listeners, currently something in your life that you are appreciative of,
Mm.
and then something that you are looking to integrate into your life. So something either that has, something a new habit you're trying to form, or perhaps something that you're challenged by but trying to integrate it. So, what would be your appreciation integration today,
Mm.
the last day in February 2022?
I love this question. I love this question, and I really put an emphasis on gratitude in my personal life. I like to start each day with gratitude, whether that's out for a walk and I'm just mindful of the things that I have in my life, or if it's a written gratitude journal practice. And it's so important to put your mind into that framework of being grateful for what we do have. And it's so easy in today's world to focus on negativity, to focus on a lack of things, to focus on all the bad things that are going on, or situations that we might be going through, and really put all of our time and energy into that. And that's where a lot of people, fall, where they lean into that negativity, and then next thing you know, you're attracting more of that into your life. So I love that question of what I'm grateful for, because it's so important. For me, I would say it's my health,
Mm-hmm.
especially given the world right now with a global pandemic, and not just physical health scare, but mental health crisis, where people are struggling with things like anxiety and depression, and overwhelm of stress, and a lack of purpose and meaningfulness in life and happiness. And I often look around when I'm out for a walk or I'm at the dog park with my dog, and I don't want this to come from a place of judgment, but it's very easy to look around and see how people are doing. What's their state?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't want that to come off as judgy, because I don't really truly know people that I necessarily pass by on the street. But it's very easy to look around and ask, are these people happy? And then ask yourself, am I really happy? And the reason why I give that example of, when you walk around on the street, you look around and you have people on their phone constantly, head down, or they're walking around like slouched,
Mm-hmm.
head down, chin down. And I can't help but ask, like, why, how have we gotten here? Where did we go wrong?
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time you've seen people walking, with confidence, their shoulders back and their chin up and smiling, and then not to mention masks everywhere, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, when was the last time we've seen smiles from strangers? You know, I miss
So true.
seeing and watching and observing laughter when you're at a restaurant
Mm-hmm.
or just at a coffee shop. So what I'm getting at here is, we're going through a time where it's not easy to uh, constantly see, what we were used to of that happiness, that pure joy, the being in the present moment. We're surrounded by distraction and like I said before, anxiety and depression. So for me, in terms of my gratitude, it is a beautiful thing to have that mental health aspect, that aspect of clarity and mindfulness and sharpness of my mind
Mm-hmm.
and being so clear on what I want out of life. So there's that mental health aspect, there's the physical health aspect. I have spent the last 2 years putting a lot of time and energy and focus into bettering my health, because what better time is there than now to focus on that, whether that's better sleep, improve our nutrition, um, exercise, going out for a walk, getting fresh air, getting sunlight.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I've incorporated some other things that might be outside of like societal norm, like breath work and cold exposure. And those are two areas I'm sure it'll come up more in our conversation.
Mm-hmm.
But those are two areas that you start doing that and all of a sudden you see things clicking. It's like a domino effect.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a bit of a long-winded answer in terms of gratitude, but I would say health is top priority for me right now and something I'm so grateful to have in my life.
No, I love it. Thank you for sharing that. No, I appreciate when someone like yourself, a guest, anyone, has the ability to go long form on an answer, because it really does. It allows me as the listener, and I work so diligently to be an active listener, especially hosting a podcast. And this may resonate with you as well. It's so easy to listen to a response and then try and go, oh, I want to, or try and think of a link in the next question,
Hmm.
or oh, I want
Hmm.
to hang on to that. But no, I appreciate you going long form and letting, again, myself and the listeners get a better understanding. Those who maybe not haven't been exposed to you yet get a better understanding of how your mind and your heart work. So thank you for sharing that. Um,
Yeah,
can you entertain the second part of the question, the integration
I would
part? Is
love
this
to. I would love
something
to.
that you're working to integrate into your life?
Yeah, so to play off that idea of, a lot of screen time, right? I was talking about how we're very connected with phones, and sometimes that leads to an addiction or an obsession with social media and constant scrolling. And at that point, it often becomes numbing, where
Mm-hmm.
we try to escape our reality. We try to escape the stress from our job or our relationships, and it's like, let's just turn on Netflix, let's just scroll through Instagram or YouTube. And there's a time and place for all that. I do enjoy those things, but it can get very overwhelming, and it can take control of our lives to the point where it is an addiction. So for me, I'm looking at like, what can I do when it comes to free time instead of being on the phone or my
Mm-hmm.
computer?
Mm-hmm.
And I would love, and it is a goal of mine, to integrate more joyful activities into my life. Whether that is more time outdoors, uh, more time with my dog, more time hiking and being in nature. And then, really, I guess this would be good more so for like winter months, and we're just coming out of the winter months, but looking at things I can do that give me joy, things like creating art. So I've never been a painter, but it'd be really cool, I think, to maybe pick up painting. Or I've gotten into puzzles, the last several years too. And music has also been a big part of my life in the past, and really in the last several years, I've stepped away from that. So looking at maybe picking up guitar and piano and just integrating more creativity in my
Mm-hmm.
life.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is it allows you to A, appreciate what you have in your life, B, live in a state where you're in joy, right? You're doing things that give you joy. And then lastly, it allows you to think of new things and in new ways, right? Come up with new ideas because you're in that state of flow, you're in that state of creativity, you're in that mindset of creation. And to me, that's one of the most beautiful things about being a human being is that we have that ability to be a creator
Hmm.
and use our creativity for the betterment of ourselves, but for society. So yeah, that would be my integration is doing more creative things and things that give me joy.
I love that. And before I ask my next question, you've mentioned who I'm assuming is a very important person in your life. So I think we should probably give this person a name. What is your dog's name?
This is Bella. Yeah.
Bella. Shout out Bella.
Yeah, Bella has given me so much joy in my life. I got her gosh, a year and a half ago. She was 3 month old, border collie black lab. Got her at a rescue shelter. It was funny. If you want to hear a quick story, she was a COVID pup, and I actually picked her up. It was like a drive in or like drive. What do they call that? Not drive in, but like a
Right,
curbside
right.
pickup,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Where you
yeah,
like remember in the beginning with the pandemic, you would like do curbside food pickups, and well,
yeah.
that's what I did with my dog. Literally, like I saw a picture of her online, applied for it, got accept, they whatever, got matched, and then I had to go and in the parking lot, they just like carried her out and through the window gave me her. And later on, I was like, what was I thinking? This could have been horribly wrong.
Yeah, really.
I end up working out great because she's my best friend, and yeah, like I said, gives me pure joy.
I love it. Well, maybe you'd be kind enough to email me or text me a photo of her. We can put it on,
Yes,
link it in the show notes so
that'd be
everyone
awesome.
can experience Bella because I feel like
Yeah,
animals are such a gift, just like friends. And I would love to shine a light on her if we could.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. She's great.
there's something that really came up for me when you were answering that integration question was um, something that was very real for me a few weeks ago when I had what I will label as one of the most difficult but most freeing conversations that I've had in an extremely long time. I'm talking years with someone who I love dearly, and I've known my whole life. And it almost seemed like the idea of play was such a challenge to that person. The idea of dreaming, the idea of nurturing that inner child. And it sounded like when you were answering that question, all I could picture was, and I didn't know you when you were 8, I didn't know you when you were 12, and I just pictured that internal. And I fundamentally believe we all still are that person inside of us. So
Mhm.
how cool for you to acknowledge um, how much joy you take from how I define touching base with that version of yourself, like whether it's painting or playing music or just dancing. And
Yeah,
that's what I feel so grateful to have two healthy young humans in our lives here in this household. And man, they just encourage me just to be silly
yeah.
and be young again. And I love it.
Hmm. Hmm.
How much do you allow yourself? And obviously, you share that you're trying to integrate some of those things, but how much do you allow yourself to be unrealistic? And what I mean by that is, if we were to sit down, if you and I were to sit down right now and ask our 3-year-old what she wanted to be, which is a very
Hmm.
typical question, I'm not sure it's the greatest question to ask a 3-year-old, but whatever her answer was, I'm sure our response would be very supportive and very nurturing
Hmm.
with no boundaries. Do you still find yourself, whether it's with your business, your relationships, do you still find yourself dreaming quote unquote unrealistically, or do you
Hmm.
find that you're wearing your adult hat now more often than not?
Yeah, yeah. It's a great question. It's something I'm thinking about a lot more lately now that I'm getting more into mindset and working with clients around mindset and that fixed and growth mindset. And it's very easy to put limits on who we can be and what we can do in this world, whether that's finances, our business, our relationships, our home, the car we drive, the clothes we wear. It's very easy to limit that and put yourself in a box, and that's understandable. We go most of our lives living in a space where we're just trying to do enough and
Mm-hmm.
be enough and get by and survival mode, when you start looking at life with much more of an abundance mindset and realize, we can do and achieve almost anything we want. And that may sound cliche to some, but if you really start paying attention to what humans are capable of and what the human mind is capable of, why not set a goal that may seem a little unrealistic, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're used to making $4,000 or $5,000 a month, why not set a goal for making $20,000 a month?
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't hit that $20,000 a month, I don't consider that a loss or a failure. Because what if you end up hitting half of that? That's still a huge win. That's still
Right.
double what you're used to making. So that's something I'm totally playing into, the last few months is looking at what are some limiting beliefs that I've had around my business, around finances, around the life that I want to live and dream up, and put my thoughts into that, because that's exactly the life you have is what your thoughts are.
Mm-hmm.
What you think. This is what I mean. So many people have said this, but I've been watching a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza lately,
Mm-hmm.
and he often says this, right? What you think about, what you feel about becomes your reality.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense. If you constantly think about one thing, that's what you're going to feel, right? So take for instance the news cycle today, right? It's dark, it's depressing, it seems like the world is going to end, and who knows? Maybe it will. But if you watch the news all day long and that's all you're thinking about, then you're going to create more negativity in your life. You're
Mm-hmm.
going to create more limiting beliefs in your life. Or if you flip that and you think positive thoughts, and this isn't just about positive thinking, it's just about inviting good things into your life. So if you really center your life around those positive thoughts and allow that feeling to come in, then that's what your reality will be. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that's a big part of what I'm focusing on right now is that mindset piece and dreaming big and thinking big.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, if you don't end up hitting that big giant goal, that's not a failure. It's just that you reached and aimed really high and you expanded what you thought was maybe not possible, and you're catapulting yourself into a new space that you can now dream up new and better and bigger things.
I'd love to get your real, truthful answer to this, more so for myself, but also for the
Mm-hmm.
listeners as well. Because what you just said resonates with me so much. And I'm a big believer that if your friends don't laugh at your goals, they're not big enough. Like, I just love
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yeah,
I don't know who said that, but I heard it years ago, and I just love that.
yeah.
Um, how do you deal with, and deal with maybe the wrong word, but how do you digest?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm not sure if this is part of your process, but I'm sure at some point you're sharing your visions, sharing your goals with maybe a select few people or perhaps a lot. Um, how do you deal with people that can't see it, that don't believe it, that almost get frustrated by it because they
Yeah,
feel like you are being so quote unquote unrealistic? It almost causes them to feel uneasy.
yeah, yeah. And I face that, like whether that's friends or family, I absolutely face that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult because I love them and I know they love me, and their concern or their lack of understanding is coming from a place of love. But at the end of the day, if they don't see my vision, or they're not behind it, or they don't support it, or they don't believe in me, then fine. I'm going to let them do their thing and let them live their life. And if they want to live the same old life that they've been living, go and do that. They have the freedom to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it's two choices. I can either let that limit me and feed into what they're thinking or saying, and believe what they're thinking and saying, and say, "Oh gosh, they're saying I can't do this. Maybe I can't do this." So I can take that approach, which is going to get me nowhere. It's going to keep me limited. It's going to keep me living the same life that I'm used to, that comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can say forget them, and not in a way where I'm going to like lose that friendship or relationship, because again, it could be from a family member or
Mm-hmm.
a friend. But I'm okay. I'm okay with saying I don't need that in my life. I don't need your negativity. And I'm going to do what I know is right for who I am and what I'm meant to be and what I'm meant to do in this life. And
Mm,
the more it goes back to the whole thought pattern and mindset, the more I think from that perspective of I've made the decision to be a successful business person. I've made the decision to be a good father or a good husband or a good person in society. I've made the decision to be whatever it is that you want to be. You know,
mm,
once you decide that that's what you're going to be and nothing is going to get in your way, then I don't care who comes along and says, "Oh, I don't think you can do this." Because at that point, I've already made the decision. It's already been decided. So there's no point in spending any time or energy in that space that they want to pull me into because it's not serving me or my goals.
I love it. I love that. And something you mentioned when you mentioned Dr. Joe Dispenza, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
which again I am a massive fan and advocate of his work.
Yeah.
I haven't written it down, so I'm kind of breaking a rule, but I need to write it down. One of my goals is to attend one of his workshops and seminars,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because I really just I'm so blown away by what he shares and what he's discovering with his team. Actually, my very first exposure to him was through a podcast, where I started crying multiple
Mm-hmm.
times in the podcast, and I couldn't fully understand why, but I just allowed for it to happen, and I just realized that what he was sharing was just impacting me on so many different levels, obviously emotionally and spiritually. But one
Mm-hmm.
thing, when you mentioned him, you were talking about what we think about becomes our reality.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reminded of my very first coach that I ever spent money on was a mindset coach. And I'd love to get into your process, and we will here. And one of the very first things that he shared with me wasn't on my radar at the time, and I also read it from Tony Robbins, is the RAS, the reticular activating system. Is this something that you know of or have heard of before?
No, I'm not familiar. No.
So, and and I'm so aware of it now that it kind of makes me laugh. And like you
Yeah.
were saying about things just start coming together and they start making
Mm-hmm.
more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the it's not a theory; it is actual. We all have it. Our reticular activating system is a part of our brain where if you and I were driving in my car and we were going out for dinner, and the parking lot that we were looking to park in was extremely full, but we were looking for a parking spot. So we've both told our brains that we are looking for a parking spot. Right
Mm-hmm.
away, our reticular activating system turns on and starts looking for things that resemble a path towards a parking spot. So what would we see? We'd see brake lights, people walking towards their vehicles, people getting their keys out of their purses. All of these things would
Yes.
start to trigger us so that we start seeing what we are thinking about.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just near our kitchen here, and I actually giggle to myself at the power of this system that we all have in our brains
Mm-hmm.
when I'm looking for a utensil in our quote unquote junk drawer.
Mm-hmm.
So a red spatula. I know that a red spatula obviously is red and it has a metal handle. And right away, my brain is literally looking through everything, trying to find things that resemble the color red and a steel handle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing to me when we then sit down, whether it is through a mindfulness practice or meditation or writing things down, we are sending an incredibly powerful signal to our brain and
Mm-hmm.
to the world to start looking for those things that support those beliefs or wishes. So if it is, like you've said a few times, if it is abundance, we will start looking for things that equate to abundance. If it is
Mm-hmm.
lack, we'll do the exact same. And it's amazing to me that there's science now to support this quote unquote stuff, for lack of a better term,
Totally.
that we all have access to. And I just, like I said, I actually, I laugh at how real this is. And I encourage you, Dan, and you guys listening to this, just test it out. When you're, I don't know, where else do I witness it? Uh, at the gym, for
Mm-hmm.
example. And I know that I want to do bench press. Right away, I start looking for an open bench or things that, or someone getting up off a bench. And that's where I hit. It's amazing how a, a switch flips in your brain when you
Totally.
decide to go towards something. Do you feel like you've either experienced that, weren't aware of it, or has that not been something that's been in your uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Has it been something you've experienced either consciously or subconsciously?
Yeah. Yeah. So I love everything you just shared there. And the first thing that came to mind was for so many people, they're not aware of this system,
Mm.
right? Because we're not taught in school. We're not taught these things. And we're not taught these things by our parents. We're not taught these things by society. And it takes people like discovering Joe Dispenza or others in the space, whether that's through a podcast or YouTube, and you start listening and you start really paying attention to it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh yeah, this makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And what's so cool is like you said, there's now a lot of research behind it. There's actual science that's going into it. And if we had this conversation 10 years ago or even longer, people would say, what are these guys on? This is BS, right?
Yeah.
So so that's the first thing is being aware of it. And for me, that was not too long ago. I mean, I'm talking really just in the last couple of months where I'm starting to pay attention to this type of system and how it works and how you can attract what you want into your life, whether it's good or bad. Like if you want, obviously most of us want good things in our life,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's what we're going to try to attract. But if you're not aware of this and you're constantly thinking of, oh, I'm not going to get that parking spot. Oh, there's no parking spots left.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, well, you're not going to get that parking spot, right?
Yeah.
Or it's the same thing. A more practical example, really recently. So just this past weekend, a couple of days ago, it was in the morning. I was getting some stuff ready in the kitchen and I had a full glass of water on the counter. And I reached over for something and I hit the glass and water went everywhere. Where it's like a full glass of water, right? So like all over the floor, all over the counter, things were getting wet. And the old me would have gotten really pissed off. The old me would have been like, F this, oh gosh, I got all upset, freaked out, tried to grab towels and stuff. And in that moment, and I think having this framework of breath work in my lifestyle and meditation and just becoming more aware of my thoughts and how I react, it allowed me to say, okay, again, back to what I was kind of saying earlier, I have two choices here. I can either get really pissed off and let this ruin my day and get all flustered and let anger take control over this situation. Or I can just take a deep breath in and out, grab a couple towels and clean this mess up, and it's all over.
Mm-hmm.
And then go in about my rest of my day with kindness and presence and joy and positivity. Because if I choose the other route where I get all upset and let it just ruin my whole day, then I'm going to attract more of that. Then I'm going to go outside and something crazy is going to happen. I'm going to get in my car. Maybe I'll get in an accident. Maybe, I mean, all kinds of stuff start happening. They start piling up because you're now in that mindset of negativity. Bad things happen to me. I'm a victim.
Mm-hmm.
This always happens to me. Why does this always happen to me? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I always have such bad luck.
Mm-hmm.
You're only inviting more of that into your life.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's I think the biggest thing for me is just being aware of the system and how it works, and and then also being hyper aware of how I react, and really just slowing things down, taking a
Mm-hmm.
deep breath, and being mindful of how do I want to show up in this situation, because we have the choice of what attitude we bring to every single situation.
I love that, man. That was beautiful how you just took us through that very, for me, very visceral story. A simple one, but
Yeah.
um, and just hearing you breathe made me take a breath, and actually hearing you describe that reality for you or that experience reminded me of
Mm-hmm.
that Viktor Frankl quote where
Mm-hmm.
what is it, the what exists between the action or like the occurrence and the response is choice,
Yeah.
right? Is your choice. So if something
Yeah.
has happened to you, you can do what you did, which was just take a moment,
Mm-hmm.
breathe.
Yeah.
That is your opportunity to make a choice on how you're going to respond.
It's one of my favorite quotes. It's in Man's Search for Meaning by
Hmm.
Viktor Frankl. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the book.
Incredible book. Incredible
Yeah.
book. I do want to hold some space for you to walk me through what you do and why you do what you do, and
Mm,
let's kind of compartmentalize it, if you will. I'm
yeah.
super excited to talk about the cold exposure because that's something that I am definitely new to, but I love the impacts of it. But what I'm really intrigued by is as well is what we've just currently been talking about, which is the mindset piece. So, um, what is it that you do with your clients, and why do you find yourself doing this? Like, how did you even become to start offering this work to others?
Yeah. So we'll start with what I do. So there's a few components of my business. I have the podcast, right? And that focuses on breath work, cold exposure, and plant medicine, specifically psychedelics. And that was really the catalyst for starting this whole entire business venture and becoming who I am today, and really kind of starting up a whole new career. So that's one component is the podcast. And then I have my coaching. So I have breathwork coaching. I work with clients one-on-one to go through intentional breathing practices. And then I also offer breath coaching in group settings. So I'll work, oftentimes I'll work at like company retreats and lead deeper breathing sessions, like 45-minute, 1 hour long breathwork sessions. And those are really powerful. I actually just was at a company retreat in Wisconsin, and there's about 30 people at this log cabin out in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin. Beautiful, serene area. So I led some shorter breathwork sessions throughout the weekend, and then I had like 1 hour longer session. And at least half the group was new to breathwork. Like they had never experienced an intentional breath practice. So of course they went into it a little unsure, a little uneasy, a little nervous. And it was so awesome to hear at the end of that session what they gained from it, how they were, uncertain about the whole process. They weren't, sure what to expect, what to get out of it. And then by the end, they felt this state of bliss and presence. And one woman said that all of her physical pain went away for that hour.
Hmm.
And other people went into deeper, transcendent states where they were seeing colors and visions. And that's what's so cool is I've had that experience myself in deep breathing, and then to give that to other people is one of the most rewarding things for me. So yeah, breath work is a big component of my practice. And then in terms of the transformational coaching, I offer what I believe is something pretty unique. So around the transformational coaching package, we look at what your mindset is around really anything in life, whether that's your career, your home, your business, your finances, your relationships, your hobbies, just how you approach life. And a lot of that is limiting beliefs, from stories that we have been told our whole lives, whether that's from our parents, from society, from our teachers. You're not good enough, or maybe it was past trauma, they're bullied, or childhood trauma,
Hmm.
or all kinds of things that we all face on a day-to-day basis, right? So I work with clients on the mindset level and emotional health level, and all of it really ties in together in terms of what mindset we have and then what's happening on the emotional level. And a lot of that is from the past that has helped us back in terms of our beliefs, and really looking at what we can do to change what's going on in our present, and then creating and building a future that they truly want and deserve.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the core piece of that offer is mindset and emotional health. And then the piece that I believe is pretty unique is I incorporate that breath work, that deep breathing. So each session is actually a longer breathing session. One of those like 45-minute, 1 hour long sessions that I talked about. And what that does is it allows people to open up their minds and their hearts and accept vulnerability into their life, and open up and be truly honest in our dialogue, right? So we go through the breathwork session, and they're now feeling at much more calm and relaxed state, but also very mentally clear and focused and
Hmm.
alert.
Hmm.
And then we go into our 2 hour session around some of these topics of limiting beliefs and past trauma, and reframing their mindset and working through emotions. And that's what I love the most is incorporating the breath work
Hmm.
to really balance our nervous system. That's what we're doing when we're intentionally breathing. We're balancing that nervous system and then bringing it into the coaching aspect of looking at our emotions, how we can use the breath to better regulate our emotions, better regulate our mood, live with more intentionality, and really just live life at its fullest with pure joy, pure um, commitment and devotion to who we are. So that's a bit about what I do. Um, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to touch on there before I get into how I got into all this.
Yeah, no, I guess my only question I have in regards to that is with your one-on-one, I'm assuming it doesn't come up in the corporate interactions, but perhaps it does. Do you ever suggest, or are you ever implementing the plant medicine as well, or is that something you allow for your clients to kind of, if they care to go down that path, then you'll facilitate it, or is it something that you also, um, for lack of a better term, recommend like you would the breath work?
Yeah, so I haven't gotten to the point where there's facilitation involved. That is something that I've considered implementing into my practice because it ties in so nicely in terms of the more of the mental health aspect and specifically dealing with trauma from the
Mm-hmm.
past and looking at more of like the therapeutic setting. That is something I'm absolutely fascinated by and interested in currently with psychedelics is looking at how it is playing a role in people's lives to heal past trauma, to work on their mental health. So in terms of that one-on-one client interaction, I haven't gotten to the point where it's facilitation. It's more of offering resources and education and having conversations about what I gain from it and what's happening in the space as a whole currently. But back to your point in terms of the corporate side, I have had interests from corporate clients. So even at this retreat of 30 people, and what's so fascinating was they were a roofing industry company. So like not necessarily the clientele that you would expect to be involved in like the breathwork scene and psychedelic scene. And typically it's just more of a blue collared industry. But this company in particular was very open minded. They were very driven towards personal growth, company growth, personal development, being the best versions of themselves. And yeah, by the end of the weekend, a lot of them were asking about my involvement in psychedelic space, and it just goes to show you that regardless of what label we put on people, you know, whether that's their career or where they're from geographically, what hobbies they're into, what car they drive, what clothes they wear, we are all human beings. We are all people. And we all want the same things, right? We want to be heard. We want connection. We want health. We want safety. We want happiness. And I have noticed, regardless of the setting that I'm working with people in, whether that's one on one over a Zoom call, whether that's in person one on one interaction, whether that's a group setting, whether that's at a company retreat on the corporate level, everybody is interested in how can I get back to living the best life I possibly can? How can I live with vitality, with strength, with happiness? We're missing that right now for a lot of people in today's world. We're missing that. And that's what I'm getting the most right now from people is how can I get back into that lifestyle and that living that life of my best version.
Mm.
Um, so so yeah, that would be the answer I'd give on where I'm at right now with psychedelics.
I love it, man. Yeah, so help me understand the why behind all of this.
Yeah, yeah. So some back history with my own personal life. I am very new to all of this space in terms of the last 2 years, right? Um, 2 years ago, my in terms of my career, I was a wedding photographer, and that was it. And I still am a photographer. I still, you know, shoot some events and weddings here and there. And now it's become more of a creative outlet for me. I'm deeply passionate about street photography. and capturing really cool, raw, authentic moments that happen in everyday life. And then looking back at those photos and realizing that it was art that I created, and I'm having a lot of fun with that. But yeah, I was a wedding photographer up until March of 2020, which we all know was the start of the pandemic. And of course, with restrictions and everything, a lot of weddings, most weddings were either postponed or canceled. So it was a big hit on the wedding industry and the events and entertainment industry, as it was on so many other industries. But I quickly realized I had to do something with that time. I could either ride the wave and weather the storm, and eventually weddings would come back, which they have, and I would carry on as business as usual. But I used it as an opportunity and a moment to reflect on who I am and what I want to do with this life and what I want to give back to the world, what legacy I want to live. And leading up, like even well before the pandemic, I knew deep down there was something greater to give to this world than wedding photography. It's a great profession. It can be very fulfilling. You're giving clients, images from arguably one of the most important days of their life. And that was cool. That was satisfying. But I knew personally that I wanted to give more and do more. So yeah, right around that time, I was hearing about Wim Hof and just on different podcasts that I had listened to. So I was like, this is cool, man. He's going into the cold, like water and ice, and like, this is crazy. I got to learn about this and why he's doing this. So I got into the whole Wim Hof scene, and I started up at that same time. I was like, cool, maybe I'll start a podcast of my own. I have all this extra time. Weddings aren't happening. So I started a podcast around health in general, not having any real clear vision on like where the podcast was going to go. It was just going to be like, let's talk about health.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I was starting to get into the Wim Hof scene, and I started having instructors, Wim Hof certified instructors on my podcast, and different people like in that overall space. And then quickly realized that if I really wanted to grow this podcast and this community and this following, I would have to niche down further than I currently was. And that's when I decided to go all in on breathwork, Wim Hof, cold exposure. I was starting to explore more around psychedelics. And I realized like all those topics really went hand in hand. And at the end of the day, what all of those different topics really, the core element of each of those is living with more strength and presence and happiness. And that's where I've decided like that is my mission in life, is to help people get back to that space.
Mm-hmm.
And also like on the pandemic side too, realizing like there is just such a lack of narrative or conversation around how can we live life where we take back control of our own health and not rely on pills and pharmaceuticals and all these other things that we're being told. And let's have conversations around what we can do to build our immune system and manage stress and manage anxiety and live more in the present moment and live with more joy and love and kindness, compassion, and treat other people with that kindness and love. And that's been a big part of my mission now, is helping other people get to that space, whether that's them listening to my podcast or working with me one-on-one as the transformational coaching or the breathwork coaching. These are all just tools to facilitate more and better health,
Mm-hmm.
physical health, mental health, more presence, more awareness, be the best version of ourselves. So yeah, that's really how I got to where I'm at over these last 2 years. And I'm really having a lot of fun in the process.
I love it, man. That was a beautiful answer. Thank you for helping me understand that story and your why.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure that even is a process, just like you said, during your niche down
Mm-hmm.
exercise, you're
Mm-hmm.
probably defining and redefining why you were even doing what you were doing. So thank you so much
Totally.
for being candid and sharing that.
Yeah.
I haven't read the book, but it came up on my radar a few weeks ago, and the title of the book is called Comfort Crisis. Uh,
Mm.
and it just really intrigued me, the premise behind this book, and the author essentially is making the assumption that we currently are living and experiencing a comfort crisis.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not, because you're going into very, very cold water. But would you agree with that? And that's a general sweeping statement, obviously.
Mm.
But are we here in North America? Are we globally experiencing a comfort crisis? And if so, what can we do about that?
Yeah. I mean, I think increasingly it is becoming more a global situation. And obviously, that's not to make light of current situations around the globe. Like, of course, there's people that live in very uncomfortable situations and face
Mm.
challenges and deal with all kinds of stuff that's going on. But yes, I think, of course, historically it's been Western culture where we've had that comfort level. But I do believe it's starting to become much more of a global trend where if you just look at technology and the advancements of technology, um, even not too long ago, 10, 20 years ago, the idea of having a smartphone was limited to the wealthy, to people that had the resources to get a smartphone. And now I don't know the exact number, but I mean almost everybody on the planet has a smartphone, or at least they have access, they have the ability to get it.
Mm.
So if you look at that example, that's just one example. Then you have transportation, you have shelter, you have heating and cooling, you know. And again, I don't want to speak for everybody because not
Mm.
everyone has that luxury, but we are living in a world of prosperity, which is amazing, where we have increased access to a lot of these things that I'm talking about: shelter, transportation, heating, cooling, warm bed, uh, being the ability to just get on a flight and fly wherever, access to technology that we use, computers, Zoom calls, smartphone, YouTube, you name it, right? Like we live in a
Mm.
world of abundance, which is amazing. There's really no excuse not to get whatever you want in life, to achieve whatever you want in life, because we have the tools, the resources to do it. Now, that being said, there's a caveat to it. When you constantly live in a state of comfort, and for example, it's like we go from our air conditioned or heated home into our air conditioned or heated car, drive to our air conditioned or heated office, sit at our computer and type away, get back into our air conditioner heated car and go back home, and we just repeat the process. It's like it's comfort zone
Mm.
24/7. And that's what I love so much about cold exposure is that it puts you into a very high state of stress
Mm.
for just a few minutes where your mind is telling you like, dude, we got to get out of here, we're going to die. And then if you let the other voice that's like further back in your head like come to the front and be like, no, 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 we're good, just hold up, just give it
Mm.
another minute.
Mm.
And then you get your breath under control, and then you start realizing like, cool, we're good, I can sit in this for a few minutes, I'm going to be okay, I'm going to keep breathing. And it's the idea of, I think it's Nietzsche that said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Mm.
So that's what I love most about whether that's the cold exposure, intense breath work. It doesn't even have to be intense, breath work in general, exercise, right? Like you look at a HIIT workout. What all these are is known as hormetic stress, the idea of getting into a state of hormesis, where we have two different types of stress. You have low grade chronic stress, which we all experience, unfortunately, sometimes on a daily basis, whether that's stress from work, a boss getting upset at you for something, an email that you weren't expecting, a phone call that about bad news, somebody honking at you on the highway. Like that's all low grade chronic stress, and over time that builds up, and it leads to all kinds of health concerns. Then we have the hormetic stress, which is the good type of stress that preps you for reality, preps you for real life. When you can go into cold water and realize, sweet, I can sit in here for 3 minutes and I'm okay, and then I get out and I'm good. Like I'm badass. Like I can achieve anything. I can do whatever I want. Then you start looking at life in a whole different way. You start realizing that those limiting beliefs that we had are just noise,
Mm.
and it really expands your your mindset around what we're capable of as individuals in the human body. My God, the more I get into this space and learn about it on a scientific level, how complex the human body is, but then also what we're really capable of, how it's a machine built for survival, and it's very difficult to break down. It's why you look at, let's say, unfortunately for people that die of cancer, oftentimes, depending on what type of cancer and how severe it is, oftentimes people are fighting it off for 5 years, 10 years, maybe longer. It's because the body doesn't want to go away. It's our
Mhm.
natural instinct to fight and survive. Um, so yeah, that's what I gain most with that cold exposure is just realizing we can step outside of that comfort zone because we are really kind of living in a constant state of comfort, and that's making us weak physically, mentally, emotionally, and getting back into a state where we just do workouts, whether it's a physical workout, a mental workout, an emotional workout. You have to train your body and your mind to stay strong and thrive long term.
Hmm. I love that. There's a quote that I'm gonna butcher, and I used to say it all the time, so it was like in my repertoire. And again, it was one that my very first coach shared with me, and it was um, basically the summary. I don't actually know it enough. I would actually just completely butcher it. So, but the summary of it is, and it's Ralph Waldo Emerson. He basically said, "Only so much as you are unwilling to be uncomfortable, will there be a chance for you to survive."
Mm-hmm.
And Tim Ferriss years ago said that you can directly correlate the success in your life with the number of awkward conversations you're willing to have.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's the exact same thing. It's that it's doing those uncomfortable things. It's like you can feel it inside of you. I don't want to get in the cold shower. I don't want to get in the cold ocean or lake or what. I don't want to have the tough conversation. But I would be willing to bet what I think is a large amount of money that anyone that has done those things, had that tough conversation, gone for a cold plunge, done a cold shower, whatever it is, you don't come out the other side of that regretting it.
Yeah,
You actually
totally.
come out of it a stronger person with more clarity. Like you said, you potentially you have a new lens, a new paradigm that you're now seeing not only your life through, but also the potential of life. And
Yes.
if you're able to be in that water as you walked us through, that potential mental experience where you have, for lack of a better term, your conscious mind and
Mm-hmm.
your subconscious mind, um, and just allowing for the voice that is serving you to be the louder one, which
Mm-hmm.
is the one that's just like, hey, you've got this.
Yeah, totally.
Push through. Whereas so many of us, and I'm guilty of it myself, at times we allow the voice, the comfortable voice, to say, "That's enough," or "You did enough today,"
Yeah,
whatever the rhetoric might be. Um, but I'm a big believer in seeking, and this may make me quote unquote crazy, but like seeking to get uncomfortable, whether
totally.
that's under a barbell, in a cold shower, through conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few things that come to mind as you're speaking there. The first one that comes to mind is the idea of willpower. And when you actively put yourself in uncomfortable situations, like we're talking about specifically with the cold,
Mm-hmm.
throughout your day, then when you go to reach for a cookie, you're like, hold on. It's just like it's that split second, right? It's just that split second of pausing and saying, do I want this? Do I need this? Do I really need more sugar in my body? It's comfortable. It tastes good, but do I
Mm-hmm.
really need it? Or I can go, spend the next hour just like sitting on the couch and watching TV and vegging out. But then if you take that split second and say, hold on, you told yourself earlier today that you're going to go for a workout instead.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to that idea? Right? It's just that split second of being aware and checking in and saying, I can choose comfort. I can choose what's, easy, or I can choose what's going to make me better and stronger and achieve my goals, achieve the life that I really want. So that's the first thing. Was that just idea of willpower and
Mm-hmm.
having discipline. And then the second thing that came to mind was that idea of living life with fun and adventure.
Mm.
And I don't think you can really achieve that if you're always living in the comfort zone, if you're always doing what's easy, if you're always doing what is the known. To really get to a place where you're adventurous and experiencing new things and living life to the fullest and everything that it has to offer, you have to get outside of that comfort zone. You have to go to that networking outing that you don't know anybody at and walk into the room and just start shaking hands and saying hello to people and introducing yourself, even though you don't know anybody. It's uncomfortable. It's scary. It's an element of the unknown, but that's how you meet people. Maybe you'll meet somebody there that's a new client or introduce you to a new connection, new person. Maybe you'll
Mm.
get a new job. Maybe you'll meet, your loved one, your future wife or husband or girlfriend or boyfriend. Or, you just start experiencing different things that you never would before in terms of, activities. Like, oh, I've never gone rock climbing. Sure, cool, I'll go rock climbing today.
Mm.
I've never done stand-up paddleboarding. I'll go out and, rent a stand-up paddleboard and go out in the lake. Like, that's where you really enjoy everything that life has to offer, is when you decide to do new things, do even if it's something that's unknown and scary. Like, that's really how you get to a spot where you just milk. I always say, like, I just want to milk the shit out of life,
Mm.
you know?
Mm. 100%. Esther Perel was talking in an interview about growth and how we have to grow. If we don't grow,
Mm-hmm.
we die.
Mm-hmm.
If we grow too much too quickly, that's extremely negative. But there has to
Mm-hmm.
be some growth, and growth only happens through discomfort. It's not comfortable, um, which I fully believe. I believe that what she was sharing to be true. How do you and I believe what you were sharing earlier about walking throughout the city and witnessing people that are perhaps really into their phones or their posture is poor, whatever it may be, and and I'm going to assume this because I believe this to be true as well. I have no idea what anyone has experienced in their life or in their day, so I leave with
Sure.
love and empathy. Um, but I do experience enough in my life with friends and family close to me, and also people that I see on a regular basis throughout my experiences. And they just don't seem, as I define it, they don't seem willing to get uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wonder, and I don't spend much time on this or energy because that doesn't serve me, but I just wonder, are they missing out? Or do I need to accept that this is just their path and I'm not here to project onto them,
Mm-hmm.
hey, go jump in the ocean with Dan,
Yeah.
right? Or go have that tough conversation with your boss because that's what I believe to be true. But is there any other way to grow? And
Yeah.
will these people experience that, or are they just okay with and destined for that to be their reality?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a very thoughtful topic to consider, because it's something I face where I'm so involved in this lifestyle now of what gives me joy and what lights me up and what helps me grow and make progress in life. Whether that's daily meditation, a daily breathwork practice, getting into the cold a couple times a week, having difficult conversations, or just expanding that comfort zone of having deeper conversations, right? Even
Mm-hmm.
with like friends that I normally wouldn't necessarily have, just asking a little bit more thoughtful questions, right? So these are all things that I enjoy and that lights me up and gives me growth. But there are other people that maybe just don't see it that way. Maybe they don't get enjoyment from it. Maybe they don't want to do it. And it's a fine line that I have to walk. Like, how can I be a leader in my space and in my community, and yeah, influence people and inspire them and encourage them to come along the journey. But if they're not there and they just don't see it, I'm not going to force that upon them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's definitely a fine line to walk. I perhaps should be a little bit more aware of it, in terms of my own personal network. Because sometimes when it comes to conversations or they ask how I'm doing, it's like all around my work and what I'm involved in. I just happen to have like my work happens to be things that also really give me joy and light me up. Um, but yeah, I've learned pretty quickly that not everybody is on the same path as me, you know, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay. They're on their
Mm-hmm.
own journey, right? Like that's the other thing is if you look at who I was, like I said, when I was a wedding photographer just 2 or 3 years ago, and that was my only business. That's all I ever knew was, you know, professionally shooting weddings, doing the business, hanging out with friends, partying, just being a normal guy, like just watching sports and all those things can be fun and cool. That's who I was 3 to 5 years
Mm-hmm.
ago. And if somebody else is currently in that and they want to be in that life for the rest of their life, then cool. I'm going to let them do them. But there's also possibility in like a year or two, they may see things in a different way. They may start waking up to whatever their reality is. And it could be a catalyst that's profound. Like for me, it was pretty profound. It was like, whoa, my business is going to take a big hit here. I got to do something. I got to pivot. And then not to mention my health was not in great shape, right? I was not eating very well. I was not exercising on a consistent basis. I meditated maybe once every, you know, couple weeks. Certainly didn't know the first thing about breath work. I was not getting into cold showers, cold, you know, ice baths. Um, and the big thing was I didn't understand the concept of self-love
Mm-hmm.
and that in order to have flourishing relationships with other people, whether that's your spouse, your kids, your neighbor, your best friend, your parents, whoever, in order to have a healthy and flourishing relationship with them, you have to have a healthy and flourishing and loving relationship with yourself first. And I didn't even understand the first thing of what that meant. I didn't even know that was a thing. I was like, wait, hold on, I got to love myself. What? Like, what does that even look like? And after I realized that, that's when you start seeing things and start living in a different way, and you start approaching relationships in a more beautiful way because you know you did the work, the foundational work to love yourself first. And that comes down to how we eat, what we eat, whether you're taking care of your body, you're exercising, whether you're taking care of your mind, you're doing meditation, you're journaling, you're getting good sleep, you're paying attention to your thoughts, what you tell yourself on a daily basis. Like once you get that foundation right, then all of your other relationships just start clicking and you're living life happier and with more vibrance. So yeah, I would say for people that maybe haven't understood where I'm at and what I'm about, you know, they may never get there and that's cool, but sometimes they might just need time. You know, maybe in a couple of years they'll start paying more attention and following along and discovering their own path.
I look at someone like you as, and stay with me here for this analogy, but you're like that book, Viktor Frankl's book. I didn't read it when I was 18. I didn't read it when I was 23. I didn't read it when I was 32.
Mm,
I read it in my mid 30s, and I'm
mm,
reading it again literally now.
yeah.
And Viktor Frankl, I assume, didn't write that book so everyone would read it as soon as it was in print. He wrote
Mm,
that book because it felt true for him to do so. And
mm,
it literally just came through him. And the language that I use now as a parent is modeling, is just model how you want your kids to interact with the environment, model how you want your kids to treat their bodies,
mm,
etc. And I think that's all that someone like you, and this is my interpretation and how I would describe it is, and myself when I feel like I may be getting on the projection side or preachy side, is I just stay within my lane
yeah.
and just model. And I don't want that to ever seem like what I do or subscribe to or prescribe to is perfection, because it doesn't actually exist, but it works for me. And like you were
Mm,
saying, it works for you.
yeah.
And the past versions of us were just the past versions of us. And I've learned I've learned that's so true. to not judge yourself on your past, but judge yourself on the now.
Totally.
And I heard someone say this a while back that it's okay if you ate the donut. Celebrate the fact that you didn't eat the second or the third,
Mm,
right?
hmm.
So like, don't beat yourself up. And something you talked about, like the self-talk piece, in regards to that being absolutely crucial, a cornerstone to self-love. And that
Hmm.
was a short story that Russell Brand shared on his podcast about walking from his vehicle to a tent where his family was tenting and camping, and he dropped his keys. It's the middle of the night, can't see anything, and it's just the woods and grass. And he said he was so disgusted by how he spoke to himself about dropping his keys. And
Yeah.
he paused for a moment and said, I would never talk to my kids that way. I would never talk to my wife that way or my friends that way. So why
Yeah.
am I allowing it to be okay to talk to me that way? And I think you mentioning that is such a key takeaway for me right now, and hopefully listeners as well. If you want to practice more self-love, that's one of the best places to start. Is how do you speak to yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's one of the, it's a beautiful story and segment you just went into there. It's one of the reasons why I love meditation so much is
mm,
that allows me to slow things down, pay attention to my thoughts. And most of us, we have like so many thoughts going all over our head at all times. And before you even become aware of that, it's very easy to just let the thoughts fly wherever they go and just let them be, right? And then once you start paying attention to what those thoughts are, you realize, like, oh, I have really been negative self talking this whole time. I've been so down on myself. I've been beating myself up. I've been, going into comfort levels. And so, yeah, for me, like with meditation, it really slows things down and it allows you to become more aware of what those thoughts are. And then don't beat yourself up about those negative thoughts, right?
mm-hmm,
Just embrace it. Say, okay, this is my reality, but I have the choice to start anew. We
mm-hmm,
always have that choice to start fresh, to become somebody new. We literally can become, that's what's so fascinating about being a human, is we can become somebody entirely new than we were just yesterday or even from this morning.
mm-hmm.
Goes back to what I said before. It's just making that decision. You have to decide, this is my new self. This is the new me. I'm going to do something different. I'm going to choose a different path. I'm going to choose a different thought. I'm going to choose a different activity. And you don't have to do it all overnight. It's not about changing your whole personality or your whole business or your whole relationship overnight. That's not going to happen. It's probably not healthy. It's about taking small steps every single day to whatever that goal is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, those thoughts that we have, man, they're important.
Yeah, and they're like going back to what I was saying about the RAS, the reticular activating system. What you shared as well. What you think is what you will seek and what will become your reality. So
Hmm.
if your thoughts or the talk is of a negative context, then it's going to be very very difficult. And that's why I think, from what I understand of you now, working with someone like yourself, and we're lucky that there's so many other great resources, books, podcasts, webinars, etc., that exist of people like you who are sharing and facilitating their work. Um, it's becoming normal to sit down, pause, and reflect on that, and say like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
how am I showing up for me right now, and what impact is that having on my life, and how could that change my reality? Which is, again,
Totally.
it's incredibly powerful. I want to respect your time because I'm a big believer that time is the most valuable thing that we have. So I want to
Mm.
preemptively say thank you so much for yours today.
Yes, thank you.
But before I do let you go, um, I admittedly, before we got on, I was doing some coursework. I'm lucky enough to be doing some education for myself, and as I define it, becoming a better coach to serve my community and my clients. And
Mm.
part of the worksheet that we have to do before the program starts is answering some questions. And I thought one of these questions would be so great to ask you if you're open to it.
Yes, please.
Okay. Um,
I'm
I'll
not
give
sure
you
what question I just agreed to, but yeah,
yeah.
I'm an open book.
I'll give you two. I'll give you two to choose from, and you can put a tail on the kite. So
Great.
the first one is what brings you deep satisfaction and joy,
Mm,
or the second one is um, what are your deepest longings?
mm. I like the first one I'll cover.
Okay.
So what brings me deep satisfaction and joy? I mean, in terms of how I spend my time, I we've talked about my dog Bella. She gives me great joy. Just going out on walks or going to the dog park. Of course, spending time outside. Whether that's in water, on the lake, um, running, music, listening to music, playing music,
Mm.
art. Photography is a big part of my creativity. I love puzzles. So those are some of my hobbies. I love cooking. I would say what actually gives me true joy though is the present moment and taking every aspect of my day and being finally and acutely aware of my surroundings, what's happening. And I'm talking about so much, like so granular down the level of like when I pick up a cup of
Mm.
coffee and take a sip and really enjoying the taste. This is actually a cup of tea, but enjoying the taste, enjoying the smell, and just being so present in every moment. The sounds around us, the conversations that we have. If I can leave anybody with any kind of advice or encouragement today, is pour into your conversations that you have. We're talking about thoughts that we have, right? Those are conversations that we have with ourselves. But what
Mhm.
about with others? The conversation you and I are having right now. Maybe the phone call that you'll make with your mom or dad later on, or the time you'll have with your kids. Really pay attention to what's going on in those conversations, what you're saying, your tone of voice, your facial expression, your posture, what they're saying. Like just be so locked into that present moment. And you'll start noticing how beautiful life is when you really are aware of the present. You're not worried about what's happening in the past or what has happened in the past, what's about to happen in the future. You're just locked into what's going on right now. So I would say that is the biggest piece of joy for me is being present in every day and having deep and meaningful conversations and really pouring into my personal relationships in every way that I possibly can. That's how I want to be remembered, is somebody that showed up with love and kindness and care and intentionality and happiness, um, laughter and love. That to me is a good life. When you think, it's actually a really good quote from what's his name now? The SB is the SB speech.
Oh, from like the 80s?
Yeah, like 90s. It was
The coach
Vinny.
that was
Yeah, Coach V.
yeah, he was dying. He was
Died of
terminally ill, right?
cancer. Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
like three things. Like yeah,
Yep.
sorry, I'm gonna butcher it. Do you know it?
I know it. I know the summary of it.
Yeah.
If you do these three things every day, this is going to be one hell of a life. If you laugh, you
Mhm.
cry, and you think.
Mhm.
And what a beautiful life that is, right? You laugh and you cry, and those tears can be tears of sadness. They can be tears of joy. But the point is that you're living life with full emotion.
Mhm.
And then the third one is think. And that to me is such a cool thing that we're able to do, is that we have the power of thought. We have the power of intentionality. And that thought can be through our actual thoughts in our head. It can be through written form. It could be through a video. It could be through a podcast. It could be through conversations we have with loved ones. But it's a beautiful thing. So those are my my three takeaways is laugh, cry, and think. And you do those three things every day, you're gonna live a beautiful life.
Man, I love it. Thank you so much, dude. I was a fan of yours before, and I'm a bigger fan now. So thank you
Thank
again
you, Brad.
for sharing the most valuable asset you have,
Mm,
which is time.
yeah.
But before I officially let you go, if people do want to reach out, they want to engage with you, whether it is something professionally in regards to engaging with you as a client mentor, relationship, client coach, or they just want to say what's up, what's the best way to connect?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for your time and inviting me on and having this beautiful conversation. I've really enjoyed it today. But yeah, people can find me on my website is danvoss.co. So it's danvoss.co. I'm on Instagram. My handle is dan.voss. That's where I'm probably most active in social media. You can direct message me there. You can also message me from my website. And then I also have a podcast called A New Way of Living. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, really wherever you listen to podcasts. And the main components there are around breathwork, cold exposure, psychedelics, living life with more intentionality and love and strength and happiness.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dan. Again, I really appreciate your time. Shout out to Bella. I don't know if she's just really good, if she's really good at being quiet, but she's been super quiet the whole podcast. So thank you, Bella. Is
Yeah,
she
man,
in
she's
the?
up there sleeping. She's up in my room sleeping right now. She's been real good. We'll go out for a nice long walk in the morning, and then she crashes until like noon or one. So
I love it. I love it.
yeah,
And thank you guys for tuning in as you do week after week. It means the absolute world to me. If it wasn't for you guys, the show wouldn't exist. It would just be Dan and I chatting, which would be super cool. But we get to now share all this information. So thank you guys so much for your support. It means the absolute world. That's it. That's Dan. I'm Brad. You guys know what to do until next time. Be good and do good. That's it, dude. We did it.
thank you, Brad. Appreciate you.
Awesome, man. So well done.